First of all, I'd like to thank the audience here for allowing us to speak on what we believe is one of the most important sectors in Saudi Arabia, which is the real estate sector. And from a Capitas Group perspective, from my perspective, we believe that this is an industry that is going to probably become the second largest infrastructure in the kingdom. So before I start, I'd like to lay out some foundations from our thought process. The mortgage finance business is a critical bridge between the financial sector and the real estate sector of any country, of any economy. The financial sector needs to be ingrained in the real estate sector to really understand what the needs are. And what the financial sector does is brings two critical things together: buyers and sellers, by stimulating the economy and infusing money. I was in some of the neighboring countries in the region, and one of the key things that we keep telling people when they talk about how healthy the real estate sector is and how strong their real estate sector is, our question becomes, the real estate sector is as good as the amount of transactions being taken place in the sector. If there are no transactions being taken place, that is an indication of the sector needing something to stimulate it. And the fact is that transactions are stimulated by three things: a buyer, a seller, and an underlying real estate. But to make all three come together, you need to infuse capital. You need to infuse capital. You need to give the buyers real purchasing power, and you need to give the suppliers and developers a true understanding of that purchasing power so they can build and develop their project plans according to that. It is a great concept to say, build and they will come. But I think in Saudi Arabia, we have a great opportunity to say, let's build according to who will come, who will buy, who will have the purchasing power to buy. Let's build for them so we can do real transactions and develop a real estate industry. So in my presentation, my aim is to discuss, identify, and prove to you that Saudi Arabia is at a very foundational, but an excellent foundational stage of an upcoming excellent real estate market if proper steps are taken, which means the real estate sector, developers and suppliers, the financial sector, and the government, the regulators, need to come together to promote this sector together. What I will explain to you in this presentation is that this is a potential 1.2 trillion Riyal industry, and that is how much capital it's going to require over the next 10 years. It is a significant industry. The financial sector is a critical part of it because it will create real purchasing power, and you will see how it will stimulate transactions in the next few years. The core foundations are already there, with examples of SEMA, Saria, title registration, appraisal companies that are all being developed and are already there. In fact, it's better and more progressed if you look at the foundation than it was when Dubai started or other regional areas. You will see that Saudi Arabia is not far behind and a very strong foundation. The mortgage law, although there is question of when it will be passed, but I think we've seen the drafts of the mortgage law. It is a comprehensive mortgage law. It is a mortgage law that will be protective and at the same time will help financiers and others promote this industry. I think the infrastructure requires liquidity, and we'll talk about that. And what it really requires is a streamlined financial industry and mortgage companies that can deliver to suppliers, customers with true purchasing power, where the developers can understand that the customer who walks into their doors, the home buyer that walks into their doors, has real purchasing power, is holding an approval from a bank of how much house he can buy or she can buy. So I'd like to start with giving you a perspective, our perspective of the Saudi market and where it stands today. Let's look at the Saudi market. You have a G20 country. You have an economy that has outperformed others in the MENA region, which is a significant factor. Everything, whether it be the oil prices or anything that you look at around infrastructure development, growth of the population, age of the population, everything tells us this is an emerging market. This is not a stagnant market. The demand in housing, and I look at this differently, I don't think that it's a question of business demand for housing in this country. This housing demand is a social desire in Saudi Arabia. If you look at the age group, if you just look at the fact that over 50%, 70% of the population is renting today, then you look at the fact that 60% of the population is under 30. That means they're at that age right now where they're going to be making the decision to buy a house. Their next phase in life as individuals, as family members, as head of households, is to desire to buy a house. And the population continues to grow. So if you look at that, this is a market, a social desire, home ownership. And that is why the government is focusing on it, the financial sector is focusing on it, and the industry, the real estate sector is focusing on it. This desire has to be made. It is imminent that the law has to be made and passed, liquidity has to be provided, and the banking sector and the financial sectors have to react along with the developers. One of the key things that you need to understand here, and I'd like to talk to it, that as much as the sector is robust and great, there's a gap. The banking industry today is not financing enough of the customers, and in turn is not able to give you, the developers, a true idea of purchasing power. This industry needs to be augmented by independent financing companies who are focused on the real estate sector, and that is the phase that the law and everything else is going to enable in the future. Now, what is this purchasing power? And let me give you an example of why it's important. On the left here, you will see various different numbers of the per unit real estate demand that pretty significant organizations in Saudi Arabia talk to. They range anywhere from 150,000 units a year to 234,000 units here. Any developer that I speak to tells me it's a lot more. It's a lot more than that. But let's be conservative. But the demand of units can be as much as it is. What people need to understand is the demand and the supply of units connecting to each other with a real understanding of how much purchasing power everybody else, the individuals have and the buyers have. In the end, everything boils down to, as my colleague here likes to say, it's about that one house that is sold to the one customer or buyer, and we have to understand how much of a house he or she can buy. In the end, the transaction boils down to that. The financial industry helps create that purchasing power. Once you know that purchasing power, you can build to this demand accordingly. And once we understand that purchasing power, we can infuse more liquidity. The market has to become real. So if we take the 150,000 units, which is the most conservative look at this, and if we take an average of 800,000 riyals as the single unit average purchasing power or sale price, I want you to understand from this diagram where this industry is going. At 150,000 units a year, this industry's demand over the next 10 years is going to be 1.2 trillion riyals. That is how big this market is. That is how much business can take place, is going to take place from a demand perspective, conservative demand perspective, in Saudi Arabia. Even if you look at what the population today, and we did a general analysis, we said, let's look at how many people make over 5,000 riyals a month, and how many of them are between the ages of 19 to 44, which is the actual ideal candidate that we can give mortgages to. Where does the demand stand today? Today, the demand stands at 420 billion riyals. That is the potential that developers and real estate industry can sell to today.